Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for February 21st, 2025. I'm Benji Fisher, sharing my screen and moderating. And also present are Simo Hell and Thomas Howell. We've been working for a while on this issue. For the sake of recording, it's 3370326. Refine field descriptions and let me navigate to this page again for the sake of the recording. If you go to content types and manage fields for any content type, create a new field, you have these options, and then we're occasionally discussing the text on this page, but mostly after selecting an option on this page and continuing, we're discussing text on these pages. And last week we did get to the list of text and list of integer fields. And Simo Thomas, do you notice a difference from what we were looking at last week? Last week there was a third option, list of float.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I thought there were three.
So just within the last week, an issue was fixed that said the float option is too confusing. People don't use it. Let us remove it from the user interface. So if you already have a field of that type, then you can edit it. And you can create it programmatically, but you cannot create it from this page anymore.
That makes I'm I don't know what to say. That confuses me. Like, that's the first time like, with the fields, there's lots of things that don't make sense. Like, even with explanations, you have to use documentation with fields because fields are complex. It's just we're trying to help people know why they should be interested enough to look at the documentation. That's been the approach I've taken in reviewing this stuff is we don't have the screen real estate to explain everything, but yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of shocked.
Do we have, by the way, any core field for entering percentages? Because I think, well, we list integers could be used for that purpose with kind of tweaking, but I'm thinking like selecting tax percentages. Well, there is some tax fields probably that are completely different.
For percentage, I would probably use one of the number fields, not integer.
Yeah, but for a selection list, because it's always a predefined list of options.
Okay.
Like different for like basic commodities, medicine, or like food products. So it's different. So it's always predefined list. Yeah, I was just thinking what possible use a floating point could have.
Right.
A floating point has like anything statistical. Like, if you were listing values that were fractional, if you were listing real time, like approximate prices that weren't rounded to the dollar or whatever your local currency was, like, there's a ton of use cases for float. If you're looking at this as collecting or maintaining any remotely data science-y type stuff.
I was thinking about a predefined list, which we are looking at.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay.
In the predefined list,
yeah,
the odds of what you're making a list of just being an integer is, to me, is just kind of mind-blowing. It's like saying you don't want to have pivot tables in Excel because they're too complex.
So let's go on to the next screen. And just keep in mind these similarities between the two. So here we enter, for a list of text, we have limited formatting for the name or the label. So I could have like 3/4 as one option. And by default, the machine name, the thing that will get stored in the database, is lowercase with spaces replaced by underscores. But you can make it anything you want. You could, for example, put in the string 0.75 there as one option. And the next one could be 1/2. And you could use the, oh, this is so buggy. You could use the string 0.50. So this is one option for this sort of examples you've been suggesting.
You can do it, but it's not storing it in the right format. A machine name isn't necessarily the values if you were to spit them out. Like you'd have to then process it. It's just it is doable, but I think it would just feel wrong in a lot of ways, and you'd have to add extra steps in between. But anyway, it's done.
Yeah. Do you know if they moved that into a contrib module or they just removed it?
It's it's sort of still in core, and you, as I said, you still can edit one of these things if you already have it
Yeah.
on your site.
What is from UI removed only? Okay.
That's right.
Weird.
So if I do a list of,
Why before committing did that not even come to the usability team for consideration though? Why wasn't it, like it seemed like it completely skipped us, and that's a pretty big UI change.
I don't know, I would have to look at the issue history. And I'm going through the other option that's currently available in the UI. And we still have this separation between name or label and a value. Here we don't get a default. So all would be maybe 100 and half could be stored as 50. So again, the similarities between the two are substantial. In both cases, you have a name field or a label that has limited formatting, so you can make things bold or italic. So I could say, what do we have? Strong emphasis. More. Being a mathematician, I always hate it when people say they're going to give 110%, but they do it. So in both cases, you have limited formatting in the name field, and what's different is how the fixed list of options are represented in the database, whether you store an int value or whether you store a string value. So getting back to the interface text that we're trying to improve. My feeling is that we need some sort of explanation up top saying that you have limited formatting, that the name can be changed later, but that what gets stored in the database cannot be changed later. And then in these two sections, just list the differences between the two. And then we need to come up with a good example. Do you agree with that?
It seems reasonable to me. I don't know. My head still feels broken from the change. I mean, I don't know why we would say values stored are numbers without decimals, because that implies there's a way to store numbers with decimals. So, yeah, I mean, like I agree with you. I think that having something that is the common stuff to explain being above at the top makes sense. Do we have any text that we'd already created or not yet?
I don't think so. When we were talking about it last week, we didn't go through the little demo that I just did. And it wasn't until late in the meeting that we realized how similar the two cases were, that um, whatever option you choose, you have the same formatting options for the name field, for example.
I know when it comes to list text, a term that's missing that would matter to people who are more technical is that the values are stored as strings versus integers. And that could matter if someone's looking to make a list and then dump the data out somewhere or dump the information out through an API. I think the fact that it's fixed is really important, as you mentioned already at the top. So maybe we just start with that. Do we want to edit here or do you want to edit in the spreadsheet?
I think I'd rather do it in the spreadsheet. So, don't see here an area to put the overall text. Let me see whether there's something on the first tab on the spreadsheet. Yeah, this is just the text that goes on the previous page. So let's add a row here.
Before we proceed, I have a question for you, Benji, and I think I know the answer, but I just want to ask it.
Yeah.
If they pulled float, what is the value of differentiating just integer numbers? Why wouldn't we just make lists all strings? It would simplify everything. Like I'm lost on why have this choice, because if the numbers you're storing, like if what you're storing, the type of that matters, then I think you'd have more than just these two. And I think this is partially out of scope, but I'm asking because like how we design this and how we add this extra text matters, and I just wanted to ask it up front.
Yeah, I guess there might be efficiency concerns. An integer is just a few bytes, and string is, I don't know, a dozen bytes or maybe 100 bytes. Yeah, I think that's a pretty small performance difference in most cases. Probably the bigger difference is the interface for entering the key, the stored value. And with a list of int, you have a nice regular text field that accepts integer entries, and you type something into there. Whereas with the string, a machine name is automatically generated for you, and it takes a couple of extra clicks to override that.
So does that mean the issue then is in how, and so what's being stored, and maybe that's what was confusing me when you first showed us, because I didn't understand that, I guess. When we were in string in the demo, you were editing the machine name. So when we put in 1, 2, 3, 4, that is the machine name that is getting saved. I thought these were being saved into just simply a table that had a list. So I didn't understand that with integer, it was saving a machine name.
So with a list of text, remember by default, I got lowercase 3 underscore quarters, and I changed that to the string 0.75.
Right, yeah, I remembered you doing that. That was the one that
Okay.
was clear. It was more that with the integer, I didn't realize, for some reason, didn't process that integer. That field does not imply to me that it's being saved as a machine name. I thought it was just going into a table where it had label and value in the table.
Yeah, so the field configuration stores that table, whether it's list of int or list of text. And this table has 3 entries. 100 goes to all, 50 goes to half, 110 goes to more than all. And then what gets stored in the database for every instance of the field is just this value.
Right, so so to me then, that part of that I'd want to see change is how the string is calling it a machine name, because calling this a value and that a machine name, that's a pretty divergent pattern. Like I would change this UI in that instance, because like it's basically the same thing as label and value, just rather than value, label in string or label in text. I don't know why this is doing the machine name. Machine names used elsewhere in the UI when you want to obfuscate things from the people that are entering information. But I don't know why when you're building a list, you want to obfuscate information and force someone to press the edit. That's just, I'm not sure I understand what the intention of the difference between these two fields is. Because you can put integers in here as well. You could edit the machine name and make that 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, I could use 75 and 50 instead of
Yeah, yeah.
0.75.
Right. And I'm just wondering what I get what you said about how it may save on space, but from a simplicity standpoint, if we're looking to simplify, I don't know why we don't just have label and then value, and it's just a different UI approach. But anyway, you just want text, so we can focus on text.
Yeah, I think some more consistency is probably a good idea, and maybe calling this value rather than machine name might help. But yeah, that's out of scope, and I would like to go back to
Yeah.
this text. So I've added this row, and I'm going to call it overview. Do I want it bold? Yeah, I guess I do want it bold. And then I guess this column is where we're putting our suggestions. So let me just, don't want this to be bold. Let me just type something and then we can try to improve on it. So each list item has a name. Maybe I'll capitalize it. And formatting. And value. Value cannot be changed since they are stored in the database. Name and later. There, it's not bold. Does that have the important information that's common between the options? Is this more than we need to say? What do you think?
If I remember correct, the values could be changed if they are not in use, or was that something like it looked like they could be, but they couldn't?
You're right, and I left that out because I wanted to be short, but if you think that's important, we can put it back in.
The values that are in use, maybe.
Okay, let's see. So let me also be consistent, capitalize things. Values. And I just say in use or should be that are in use.
Isn't the term label more frequently used than name?
Yes, and I keeps calling it a label in these discussions, but but again, changing that would be out of scope. I think we're not going to be. This issue is not going to change the things we see here, which is where that change would have to be made. And so I think we want to make this text consistent with what's there. But yeah, I totally agree. I would rather call it label rather than name.
This seems fine, assuming that we don't want to make any other changes. So,
Okay.
I think we want to make all the changes, but we are not allowed to do it in this issue.
yeah.
Okay. So um I'm going to remove what we put in last week because I think it's just confusing. And now that we have the common information, oh, and actually, how do I do this? I put the row in the wrong place. I want this above the list of text. So let me insert one row below. probably a better way to do this, but this will work. Okay, so for the selection list, we have this overview text. And then for the list text option, I think we should continue to use the word value. Although maybe we should also use the word machine name. Ah, and Aaron McHale has joined us.
Hello.
Glad you could make it, Aaron.
Me too.
We are continuing the discussion from last week. One thing that we spent a little time talking about is that the list of float option has been removed from the user interface by an issue that was fixed just in the last week.
What was the? Do we know what the motivation for removing the list float was?
I think there were technical reasons that it behaved in unexpected ways, and I guess it was decided that it just was too confusing and not used very often. But
Well, it's unfortunate that list that sort of field type had to sync, I suppose. But there we go.
anyway,
No, oh, come on, that was a good one. Oh, no one. Did anyone get that one?
I think I missed it. You made a
Yes,
pun?
I got
I
it.
said I said it's unfortunate that field type had to sync, but there we go.
Yes.
Sync, is that?
Yes.
Like
It's a
float
floating.
sync.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Ah, float had to sync. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You have the advantage that it's mid-afternoon for you. I'm
Yeah, I'm more
barely
awake,
awake
that's
over
fair.
here on the other side of the pond. Um, so Aaron, we're also saying that rather than name, we would like to change this to label, but that's out of the scope for this issue. And for a list of text, we have machine name. For a list of int, we have value. But we can't change that as part of this issue. So I think for here, I'm going to suggest that we use both the word value and the word name. So we'll put values, machine names are text strings. Is text string redundant? Plain text? Actually, it's more limited than that. They are strings of lowercase letters and underscores. Oh, actually,
No, it's not. You can add dots and also uppercase in this one. So that's confusing. That's confusing for a machine name, but here can use almost anything.
that's right there.
Yeah, it needs to be like base 64, I think.
But
I'm
that's
sorry,
why
I missed the last part. It has to be
I think it needs to be base 64.
base 64. Okay.
But not 100% sure. No, it doesn't actually. Dot is not included in base 64 either. So it's not, I think it's not, well, yeah. There might be some limits if it's using the class machine name.
Default value is based on the, I guess, want to be consistent about capitalizing value and name. And then this is very simple. Values are whole numbers. And I guess we haven't been using ending punctuation. And we're no longer distinguishing between integers and floats, so I'm not going to say without decimals. That would be redundant. And my idea is that this overview text would be, I guess, between the label and choose an option below. Possibly below the options. And if that's good enough, we can go on to the examples. What's a good example of a list of text? And we don't want to be US centric, as the current example is.
You could go with fruits.
I was gonna propose we could use our own Drupal.org usernames, but that might be an abuse of power. I mean, there's 4 of us, right? So it's enough for a list, right?
And what about this formatting with the equals greater than that? That'll be recognized by PHP developers. Would it be clearer to separate the names in one list and the values in another list?
I don't know for sure, but I feel like there is something understandable about the kind of like a key then a value, key value. Hard to as you know, because I understand that because as a developer I get it, but like yeah, it's hard to say.
Let's write it both ways and then decide which one we want. So we already have it written one way. So apple, orange, those are standard. What's a fruit with more than one word?
Watermelon,
Watermelon is one word.
not the way I spell it. Apparently.
Cherry.
Could you include something like mango or durian fruit or like durian, something different? Because if we're not trying to make it US centric, we could include fruits that are from elsewhere in the world.
I also want to keep it short. I do want to have one with a space in it. Names. apple, mango, black cherry. And let's just say with values. Apple, mango, black, cherry. And right. Okay, so comparing that to the what we have in the first column, should I switch to that formatting?
I'm having trouble getting past the example colon names apple. Like those three words keep on throwing me for a loop. I don't know why. It's easier to read values and then lowercase apple. It's probably because you've got three capitalized words in a row. Like I keep on reading names apple as one term, like names apple, or like it looks like an error to me.
So it would help to go to this format? Would that be clearer?
Yeah, I mean, even if we, I think for a lot of, again, non-technical people, non-Python or programmatic, like people who don't program, it the other one may be confusing because the question in my mind that appears is, do we need to put single quotes around the terms in the other example? So where it has U.S. states and it has the two quotes, I'm like, I um, I think that that format, like if you removed the US states and just had like Illinois equals greater than, like that makes more sense to someone who doesn't realize that you're trying to, that one side of the colon is a list and the other side is a label for the entire list.
That's
Yeah,
something like
that's
this.
better. Um, yeah, I think that works better for me.
Aaron, Simo, any opinions?
Yeah, that works for me too. I mean, again, it's difficult to have an opinion about because like I can understand any of these structures, but like somebody who's not technical might not. So
I think for me the hardest one is the one with the names apple, because it's kind of it's easier when they are like next to each other than name and value.
Okay, so you prefer this one also?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And let's use that format here as well. Caps lock, bane of my existence, example. The, um, lifetime in days. Um, shall we use days of the week?
You could use a Likert scale. A lot of people understand that.
Uh,
That's
is
the
that the
like 1 through 7, and it's like don't like you could do it could be a 5 point Likert scale or a 3 point Likert scale, but basically it's like don't like is 1, neutral is 2, and like is 3. And you can replace the words with whatever you like. It doesn't have to. I don't have to constantly use like, but the idea is you have some set of numbers, and those numbers are associated with words that people use to answering on a survey.
How about, I don't want to use hate, that's too negative.
Agree and disagree are commonly used as
Yes.
neutral.
Okay, so disagree. 1, neutral. 2.
Are we allowed to have negative numbers?
Yes,
So we could
well,
Yeah.
negative disagree.
but let me make sure that's allowed before for less than 0, -3. Yes. So would a scale of -1, 0, +1 be a better example?
Yes, but most of the time in data science you'd shift it, but that's a fine example. You just really probably don't want to do that because it means that people who agree and disagree would cancel one another out if you tried to do statistical analysis of the data. But yes,
I think there,
you can go -1, 0, 1.
I think I like a point you made, Thomas, about because yeah, when you said, I think you said like about having the agree, disagree, like you the Likert scale kind of thing. And it made me think that the good thing about using, like, if you saw that and you think, oh yeah, I could use that, that's how I could use this. Like through all of these, if we pick, if it is, I guess just a good reminder, like if we pick examples that are very common things that people might use these for, it just helps people understand as well how they would use these. So it's just a good observation to keep in mind when we're coming up with all these things.
Yeah, definitely. I want my examples to be realistic.
But this is a use case. Like I've in the past, before I went to school again, I used this exact thing often. I just now know why I shouldn't. So
This is kind of a minus and plus. It's like a upvote and downvote kind of.
yes.
So it's different things.
I guess we could use something like upvote and downvote rather than agree and disagree. And instead of neutral, we could say abstain. But I think those are sort of more technical words, and I'd rather stick with agree, disagree, and neutral. Okay, we have 5 minutes left, which probably is not enough time to dive into date and time. So we could end the meeting a little early, or we could you know, tweak some of the text we've added here. Or do you see any changes you want to make? Okay, then let's just end the meeting a few minutes early. We are almost done. We have one more field type to consider. And thank you all. To
Right.
do it again next week.
I enjoyed the small irony that we ran out of time to do time.
Thank you, Aaron.
No
I'll be
more
back next week with more like that.
Oh, I missed that Simo gave us in the chat a link to the list of fruits in Wikipedia. Okay. There are not a lot that have spaces in them. There's Momordica fruit and Monstera deliciosa. Blood orange. Okay, that's a little more familiar.
Oh, just to add, I might actually not be around next week because I'm next Friday I'm traveling down to Cambridge for Drupal Camp England. So I'll
Ah.
probably be on a train when this meeting is happening.
Okay. I'll have a good time at Drupal
Thank
Camp
you.
England.
Thanks, Benji. See you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.